So what I like to do is, again, to highlight how critical the selection of young vines and the planting material is for you guys, covering some viticulture perspectives, some economical perspectives, and some ecological perspectives to wrap up everything we have talked about over the past couple of days, and then pause for a second and trying to look very carefully as to where we stand in terms of the production of clean vines these days. And why pausing? Because, again, I'm going to give you the Marc Fuchs philosophy on the production of clean vines. And I will argue that the current system is not satisfactory. The current system needs absolutely to improve, and improve sooner and faster. And I'm going to share with you other thoughts in terms of how we can move forward towards a certification program that is meaningful, realistic, and more impactful going into the 21st century. And obviously, you know me by now, I will highlight how your contribution, each of you, and collectively this group, is key to develop that certification program for the 21st century that we all need. With that being said, let's rock and roll. Selecting young vines is a strategic decision. And you remember some of the comments I made during my first presentation on day one? Stop ordering clone 214 of Cap Franc on 10114. These days are gone. Order clean 214 on clean 10114. And how do you know that the material is clean when you place the order? Well, there is nothing wrong about asking for evidence at the nursery level, right? He will tell you that, yes, it's clean. Well, show me the proof. If it's clean, it has been tested, right? And shown to be test negative. So when was the test put in place? When was it carried out? 20 years ago? 10 years ago? Last week? And obviously this is key because 10 years ago we didn't know what red blotch was. So there was no assay available for red blotch. And who ran the assay? Which material was assayed for all these viruses? Was 5% of the stocks from which budwoods are collected tested? Or 100% tested? So ask all these questions so you can raise your level of confidence in the cleanliness of the material that you use. Selecting, again, clean vines is very strategic because, as we discussed the other days, there is no cure for any virus in a vineyard. Once a vine is infected, it remains infected until it dies. And we talked about a little bit, we touched upon top working. I have no issue with that approach if it's managed properly. What I mean managed properly is make sure that when you collect your assigned budwood, that you have flagged your vines that don't show any symptoms, any apparent symptoms, and make sure you test some of these apparently clean vines for viruses, because you do not want to contribute to the dissemination of viruses in your own blocks, right? Just common sense. However, remember what we talked about yesterday, and the day before, the most efficient disseminator of viruses are the two-legged Homo sapiens, us, right? We are more efficient than the dagon nematodes, the mealybugs, the soft scales, the tree hoppers, the mites, all combined together. Now, when it comes to the selection of budwood, we talked about signed budwood. How about rootstocks? Rootstocks are even more critical for virus testing because, as we talked about, most rootstocks will show latent infection. In other words, they can get infected with viruses, but they will not show any apparent disease symptoms. And this is just, again, a panel of different slides that illustrate red blotch symptoms either on scions or rootstocks. You have Cap Franc, Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and then the rootstocks. And the only rootstock for which I was able to cause symptoms with red blotch virus is SO4 that you see on the last slide on the bottom right, where you see an overall capping and chlorosis of the leaf blade. None of the other rootstocks that I tested here that are shown on this panel will exhibit any disease symptoms, although they are infected with red blotch virus. So again, coming back, if you deal with a nursery that will provide the rootstock buds, when did he do the testing? Did he do the testing? At what level? Is it 1% of the stocks? 5? 90? Everything? Now, do you feel comfortable if one tests 1% of his nursery stock versus 100%? Obviously, the decision-making process in terms of placing an order hopefully will change depending on the feedback you will receive from the nursery, right? And then if it tells you it's test 100%, okay, show me the proof. Show me the proof. I want to have confidence in the traceability of the material in terms of its cleanliness. And you know what? This should be part of sustainable ag. That's part of what business should be about. And I do not know a single nursery who will not be transparent and offer all the information you are entitled to as customers. Maher mentioned the economic impact of viruses. These are some of the figures that we put together by teaming up with an ag economist in terms of leaf roll and red blotch. We already went through these figures. They can be quite impressive, and I fully understand, although you're still making a crop with leaf roll and red blotch because they never kill a vine, the economic downfall and the hardship is pretty steep. So, again, to me, the careful selection of clean vines for replants or when you establish new vineyards is strategic and an integral part of vineyard sustainability. I won't go through this slide. I recognize that it is very busy, but these are some of the proven impacts and benefits in terms of viticulture and the economy when people use carefully clean material. Now let's pause for a second. And the second part of my talk, I'll be very provocative. So Maher had a really beautiful scheme as to what it takes from a clean plant at the foundation level to that clean plant in a vineyard. And I have just a little cartoon representation here. And Maher mentioned clean plant centers like Foundation Plant Services. And Maher and his colleagues at Foundation Plant Services do an outstanding job at producing these clean plants and maintaining them in isolated vineyards. So this is a clean plant center like Foundation Plant Services. They bring in material from abroad and as well as domestic selections. And this material undergoes very stringent diagnostic and therapeutic procedures to make sure that the end product that will be established in a foundation block, like the foundation blocks maintained by Foundation Plant Services as UC Davis, are clean. From there, as Maher indicated, bud would be then distributed either to individual growers or to nurseries. And since the number of clean vines maintained in such foundation vineyard is very limited to 2, 3, 4 vines per accession, that limits the number of clean buds that are available to the industry, not only in California, but throughout the whole country. So these buds need to be increased in number. That's why once a nursery receives the clean buds from the foundation vineyard, this material then increased by vegetative propagation in increased blocks. And then from increased blocks, the material is crafted and put in nurseries, and from the nurseries, they are then distributed for establishment in vineyards. So when you think about all the procedures that this material goes through, a lot of efforts are put on the material prior to the establishment in a foundation vineyard. And the foundation vineyard requires a lot of resources for regular monitoring and auditing of the control of the cleanliness of the material. And then once the material leaves the foundation block, there is more or less some monitoring that goes on. And obviously you can imagine that the further removed you are from the foundation vineyards, where most of the resources are invested to establish clean vines and maintain them, the more likely the material can get infected with viruses. Because you move it from one site to another site to another site, and the more you expose it to different sites, the more you expose it to different environments where vectors, including humans, will intervene on the establishment and the maintenance of that material. So, Maher mentioned that California, Oregon, Washington State, and New York have included, following the identification of red blotch virus as the causal agent of red blotch disease, included red blotch in the list of viruses to test for in terms of certification. New York used to have a certification program that was established in the early 60s, right after the program in California, and then it basically vanished in the late 70s because the industry expanded quite dramatically. Obviously, New York scale, New York style, not California style, I have to acknowledge that. And people were so eager to establish new vineyards that they forgot the basic principles that if you do so, you should be careful as to what material you put in the ground. And they grabbed budwood wherever they could and offered a grabwood to the nurseries for propagation, and boom, there you go, right? Sounds familiar to most of you. So there was a grassroots movement in New York to reestablish certification. And we took advantage of that momentum to have sustained dialogue among nurseries, growers representatives, winery representatives, extension educators, and scientists. And we said, this is a one-lifetime opportunity to establish something different, something impactful, realistic, and meaningful for the whole industry. So instead of putting most of the resources, investing most of the resources in a foundation vineyard, we decided to shift gears and put most of the resources into an increased block in terms of making sure of the quality and the cleanliness of the material that goes into an increased block, and how we're gonna to monitor that material in an increased block over time. So basically we shift gears, and instead of putting all the efforts in the foundation block, we apply the standards that currently apply to a foundation block. We shift it to increased blocks in New York. And instead of having the monitoring going on in increased blocks and nurseries, we just focus on the monitoring in nurseries. And we will not monitor rootstocks, visually speaking, because that's a waste of time and resources, because I told you, most of the rootstocks show latent infection. So why would you spend resources monitoring acres of rootstocks if you don't see anything, right? Common sense. Anyway, grassroots efforts. Why do I insist on that? because altogether, we are the drivers of the system. If there is no demand for clean material, why would there be a supply of clean material? Right? So if there is no demand, you get whatever. It's going to still to be a 214 and 10114. But it's not going to be a clean 214 and clean 10114. If you don't ask for it, there will be no supply. And this, I think, are some of the principles as to why, if we continue on the same trend and just add another virus to be monitored and tested for, we are not learning the lessons from over the past 50 years, and we do the same thing over and over and over again, that will not lead you where we should be, to have confidence in the cleanliness of the material that we put in the ground. Now, I know there is a lot of people investing resources in terms of management, in terms of making sure that the level of confidence in the cleanliness of what they put in the ground is pretty high, or as high as possible. However, if we do not change, we together, and it's only a grassroots movement that will be impactful in terms of changing the framework of a certification program, we will not get there, okay? So we have to understand also the clear understanding of why the current system is not what it's supposed to be. At least I would argue that it's not what it's supposed to be. And one of the limitations is, again, at the Foundation Vineyard, there are only a limited number of vines for each clean accession that is available. And this really restricts the number of clean buds that are available for the whole industry throughout the country. What I mean by we should do a better job is, why are we not more careful as to making sure that increased blocks are established in certain sites that meet certain criteria? Why is science not the driver of this decision-making process? And you might remember that I mentioned in terms of red blotch that many wild grapes in California, in key counties in terms of grape production, are full of viruses, not only red blotch, but leaf roll. So why would an increased block be allowed to be established in close proximity to wild grapes? What would wild grapes not be removed when they are in close proximity to increased blocks? Why would isolation distances from these so-called certified clean vines not be expanded based on what we know on the ecology of red blotch and ecology of leaf roll? Why would clean certified material remain in close proximity to non-clean material? It's just a matter of time for the clean material to get reinfected because mealybugs and tree hoppers and other vectors are all around, without mentioning human beings. And I can go on and on. Why are some increased blocks that are known to be infected with viruses still on the list of certified blocks? Honestly, I don't get it. And these are little things that, if we are all vigilant and contribute through this grassroots movement to the 21st century certification, we'll all benefit from it. So, just to close, you can tell from this picture, this is not California, right? And you can tell I'm very happy and proud to be in New York most of the year. There are 5 or 6 months of the year where You know, when we have temperatures in the single digit and this white stuff on the ground, that's kind of different, right, Kendra? Brings good memories back to you, I guess. Anyway, this is the Finger Lakes where I have the privilege to work. And just some closing thoughts in common sense again. High-quality grapes, they only can come from healthy vineyards. And healthy vineyards can only be established with healthy vines. And what do we mean by healthy vines? Obviously, when we deal with viruses and trunk disease agents, we mean clean vines. And the last thought, before I thank you for your attention, we are all in it together. If we are not all in it together, we will not make any progress, and we have not made any progress since the early 60s when certification was first established. With no further ado, thank you so much.